Hello everyone, welcome back to another installment of Kathryn making Void. This week I've spent the week just sanding Void down and making her really nice and smooth. I sanded her down with those multiple layers of grit so that I could build to a really polished velvety finish, because I want the base to be as smooth as possible with each layer, so that by the time I get to that light absorbing black, it's really textureless beneath it, and the effect of light absorption is uninterrupted by texture. So I've been sanding it down. It's been this really nice kind of loving process of getting to know the piece really intimately, and while I'm sanding it, I'm thinking about different things I could do with paint as I paint the piece, or different ways I want to fill in the drawing part of the pieces. So I've just gotten to think about the pieces while working on them really intimately. And then the rest of the work I did on Void this week was very unglamorous. I just turned the pieces over onto their backs, and I got the back of the pieces ready to hang. So one of the things I like to do with my work, and because I'm a Virgo rising, I think ahead in this way and interrupt my own creative brain. But I want to make sure that when I'm done the piece, she's just ready to put on the wall, and I don't have to finish and be oh, how am I going to hang the piece? I'm using a Dremel, and Dremels are not really supposed to be routers. They have different attachments you can use to make them routers, but I'm not using those attachments. I'm just using a cutting guide. So it's a really slow process for me because I'm not doing it professionally. So I'm sitting there for an hour routering the piece, but while I'm doing it, I'm just imagining what the piece is going to be like, and I'm thinking about it, and things kind of occur to me. So while I've been routering the piece and getting it ready, to just plop this little sheet of coloring pencil black paper drawing on it, I've also been thinking, well, if I have enough room to put in more than one sheet of paper, then I can have one sheet of paper in the back and have sheets of paper in the front that have holes cut out of them so that selective parts of the image are being revealed. And if I'm doing that, then I can have different kind of drawings on those other sheets of paper and see how they interact with each other. Different types of paintings on those other sheets of paper. So I've been kind of continuing to imagine how I can create this effect of the void, of going into the piece, the piece has this infiniteness to it that could swallow you whole, So I've been continuing to think about that as I prep the piece, and my hope is that for next week I'm painting it. I'm painting the frames, I'm priming them with a black gesso, I'm going into them with more layers of paint and getting the kind of frames really ready. And then at the same time, when I'm letting those coats dry, I can be drawing the drawings that I'll be mounting into them and getting those ready. And the thing I really like when I'm compiling a piece like this, when I'm assembling it, I get to work on this part and this part separately, is I can do multiple versions of this part and then experiment and see how they fit with the whole, and then go with what I want to. I've been experimenting with the pigment black and trying to find really velvety, deep, lose yourself in it light absorbing blacks. And when you apply a light absorbing black like that to any surface, you won't be able to perceive the relief of the surface or the three-dimensionality of the surface anymore. And it's really cool. Basically, it forces you to realize that when we're looking at shapes out in the world, the only reason why we can see them is because light is bouncing off of them. And that's how we can tell that they're a color, and that's how we can tell that they have depth to them. And if the light doesn't bounce back off to you, you suddenly can't see the depth of the piece anymore. So we have light absorbing blacks that are really effective. The most effective one is called Vanta Black, and it was developed and is patented by the artist Anish Kapoor, so nobody else can get it without his permission. But this man, Stuart Semple, who I believe used to work with Anish Kapoor, felt that this was really unethical, and he developed a business that creates a different version of a similarly light-absorbing black that doesn't violate the patent, but has the same ultimate impact. So it doesn't have the same ingredients or composition or chemistry. And his black, he's released multiple versions of it, and he's currently on his 3rd version, and it's called Black 3.0. And it's so matte, it's super, super matte and velvety and really light absorbing, and has a beautiful finish that's really even. And he has great videos on how to apply it for its maximum effect. And that is one of the most effective blacks I've found. And I found one that's really, really similar. The formulation isn't as even as Stuart Semple's Black 3.0, but the black itself is a darker black. And it's from a Japanese brand called Musou, M-U-S-O-U. And I've been buying those online in these little containers, and they're kind of the deeper black. And then I have this velvety black by a French brand whose name I'm blanking on right now, but their velvety black is really, really deep, but it still doesn't have that like lose yourself in it quality to these other blacks. But I want to experiment with that paint and adding light shifting mica to it. So these like little, basically like fine sparkle particulates that if you look at them from one angle, they're like an alien green, and if you look at them from another angle, they're like a purpley magenta. And I feel like that's a really galactic kind of color range. So I want to add those into one of these and just sort of play with different qualities of black on the same surface. My favorite artists growing up, the ones that I really like looking at by myself, and I'm specifying that because I'm an art history professor, so I have the artists that I study and the artists who I think are really amazing artists, and I have, you know, artists that I pay attention to who are a part of the canon. But the artists that I really liked sitting down and looking at and studying and scrutinizing and getting lost in and trying to figure out how they did it are folks that are generally not at all counted in the canon. You know, these are children's book illustrators, and these are lowbrow artists like Mars One, who are operating in a really different kind of world from the museum world, who definitely belong in museums, but those worlds are not quite synced up. Those are the artists I really like to sit down and spend time with, and their works were really transporting to me. And I feel like that just became a kind of refuge for me to build other worlds. And there's a kind of logic to those other worlds that I really like. And that logic emerged over time for me, and definitely emerged in response to traumatic events. And the logic of those worlds are that it's a cooperative ecosystem. It's human-free. That's a really important part. There are no people, no humans in these worlds. There aren't really like mammals or recognizable biological creatures in those worlds, but everything still kind of has a kind of life to it and navigates an ecosystem. And these worlds feel impossible. They feel like there are laws of physics in operation there that we don't recognize, that don't quite seem to be the same as ours, you know? And those are like the three kind of principles of these worlds for me. Void has this kind of poetry to it because we need absence for presence, and we need loss for gain, and we need suffering for joy, and we need these parts. They all kind of belong together, and there's such a deep wisdom, like the deepest wisdom is in the things that we're afraid of. For next week, I really want things to start to exist for this piece because I feel like I'm just laying the groundwork really carefully and building up. And that process is so important for me. It's how I get into the work. And now I feel like I'm into the work and I'm ready to like, I know what it needs to look like and I know what it needs to feel like now. And now that I know what it needs to feel like, I can get there, you know? But I wasn't quite sure before I started sanding it. So now I know what it needs to feel like, and I'm gonna start moving there. So we're gonna start with priming it with black primer, and then starting to paint those layers. And as I paint those layers of black, wet sanding them so they stay really smooth as I continue to build up to my light absorbing black, which is the finishing touch. No varnish, no nothing, handle with cotton gloves from that moment onwards, like super sensitive stuff. I'm gonna be like mining my books and my visual library of all the types of images that really inspire me and make me feel weird and uncomfortable and excited and like a child all at the same time. I'll be mining those and sort of seeing what needs to go into this little void world, and I'll start drawing them on my black paper.
And was there anything else you wanted to be sure?
We're like on mic. It's like our plans for saving America.
Yes.
You're like, in the future though, like if you need me,
Just know I am trying to save you.
just blink twice.